Beautiful, uplifting environment with rolling hills and big lakes. Peaceful. Quiet. Forgotten. Isolated. Abandoned. Overgrown. Inaccessible. Neglected. Shabby. Awful. Very scenic, but more prosperous in past times. In desperate need of economic development. Loss of jobs. Loss of community. Wasted potential. Dependent. Needs ideas. These are only some of the answers that I got when I asked the citizens of Willard how they would describe the place where they live. Hello, my name is Tom, a Belgian landscape designer, and this is Willard. Willard is a small town I stumbled across 2 years ago. It is situated in upstate New York in the USA, a 6-hour drive from New York City and a 2-hour drive from the Canadian border. The Finger Lakes are a group of 11 parallel north-south lakes, formed at the beginning of the last ice age, when enormous sheets of ice crept out and buried those valleys. Seneca Lake stretches over a length of 38 miles and is 618 feet deep. The landscape surrounding Willard is beautiful but barely visible. The landscape has a history of being invisible, which determined its function throughout history. For example, the Willard Asylum was founded there, a psychiatric hospital that would house thousands of patients at the end of the 19th century and onwards. At the beginning of World War II, the Army Depot was built there, almost 10,000 acres with 500 bunkers storing ammunition. And even today, the invisibility of the landscape still determines its fate. It is a forested, largely inaccessible and invisible island surrounded by large-scale agriculture and dairy farms. On just a few square feet, prisons can be found, and power plants dump chemicals and polluted warm water in the lake. Furthermore, the shoreline of Seneca Lake is also suffering from an erosion problem, and the region is faced with a number of social and societal challenges. High poverty and unemployment rates, few opportunities for young people, high taxes on real estate, combined with a shortage of affordable housing. Aside from these issues, it is a fascinating landscape, a time capsule of sorts. Today, the institutions have gone, but the scars and remnants they left in the landscape and the impact they had on people's lives are still there, perhaps slightly concealed. The question that became the starting point of this project is how developing the landscape could contribute to the quality of life for the people living in the area, and that is why the project is a plan that focuses on building a community. The challenge in its design is the following: how can this forgotten and disappearing landscape become a unifying landscape again, on several levels, encouraging tourism and recreation while also inspiring necessary economic development both locally and regionally? The plan focuses on spatial quality, heritage, energy, nature development and ecology, and agriculture. Broadly seen, the area is central in the Finger Lakes region, precisely in the middle between the Erie Canalway National Heritage Corridor, an important recreational heritage route spanning across the full expanse of the upstate New York, and other existing recreational hotspots south of the Finger Lakes, including Watkins Glen State Park and the Finger Lakes National Forest. A century ago, there were 2 railroad tracks connecting north to south. In the early 1940s, the Army Depot was built between those 2 tracks. Today, the tracks are no more than linear, overgrown, forgotten elements in the landscape. They form the perfect starting point for an expansion of the regional recreational network that can connect the northern and southern hotspots through the wide Land of Dix. On a larger scale, the master plan will connect initiatives and sub-areas with each other that are currently seen and maintained as separate entities. The Willard Campus, Sampson State Park, Sampson Cemetery, Seneca Air Force Base, and the Seneca Army Depot. In this plan, the connection between these sub-areas transforms the whole to one big landscape park, the wide Land of Dix. The partial plan looks at parts of each of these sub-areas. You could see it as a blueprint of how the entire area could be organized in terms of space, nature, and atmosphere. The detailed plan zooms in on the left corner at the bottom of the area, the small hamlet of Willard and its former grounds of the Willard State Hospital. The plan gives a number of specific development suggestions with regards to quality of town experience, reintegration of the Willard campus and a revaluing of its history, redesign of the banks of Seneca Lake, and rethinking the position of the drug treatment center. On each of these levels, the key word is accessibility. The area is huge, and that is why the wide Land of Dix consists of a fine-grained route network connected to the existing routes of both north and south. This network will also separate motorized traffic from non-motorized traffic as much as possible. We can take a short walk through the design to discover what the wide land looks like. Our route starts in Willard, where we will walk towards the west, past the former military Air Force Base and the Army Depot. We start on the water of the all-defining Seneca Lake, a lake as big and deep as the sea, and drop anchor at Willard Landing, the same place where, at the beginning of the last century, hundreds of new patients arrived at the Willard Asylum to start their new lives on the green and sloping banks. There was no Army Depot or Air Force Base, and the landscape these people set foot on would undergo drastic changes in the next decades. Today we dock here once more, on the same ground with the same view, and even under some of the very same trees, in the footsteps of all those who came before and by doing so wrote part of the story. We arrive in Willard by walking along the promenade that is connected to the lake trail, a mile-long walking path that connects north and south alongside Seneca Lake. The avenue trees of the olden days are back again, and at the bottom of the hill we find a living organic shoreline with riparian vegetation that overflows at high tide and can be seen up close at low tide by accessing a walking path. In the distance we can see how a boardwalk over the lake disappears towards newly developed beaches, only to connect a bit further on to Sampson State Park. The overgrown forest on the mountain flank has disappeared, reinstating the impressive old concierge house, repurposing it as a restaurant and museum. The many abandoned buildings of the former Willard State Hospital no longer await demolition, but are safe and can be experienced and seen from high above the ground through an interactive, heightened walking trail, leaving nature to run its course below with the remaining elements. At the level of the former location of Chapin House, the monumental main building of the hospital, the path virtually leads through the building's first floor, past hallways and former rooms. An app will allow you to hear stories of patients and former staff. The balcony of the main building resurfaces in corten steel and offers a phenomenal view over Seneca Lake. The view of Willard Cemetery, where 5,000 patients are buried, their grave markers invisible, hidden under aluminium plaques, changes completely, with a half-paved pathway, avenue planting, and a flowery grassland. Highway 96A cuts the wide land in two like a knife. Tunnels and a single bridge connect the sub-areas for pedestrians, cyclists, and animals. Or as you can see here, where the walking path and the Indian Creek run underneath the road, they form the start of the creek path route. New cycling and walking paths become separated from other traffic and connect to the existing network. The former Seneca Air Force Base is a landscape within a landscape and offers a large amount of space and recreational possibilities. The visitor center at the heart of the park houses a restaurant and a number of nature education facilities. The mile-long obsolete and overgrown railroad tracks will be transformed to pathways. Where they run parallel to each other, tall grasses will be planted on one side or space will be reserved for spontaneous development of plants. On a regional scale, the transformed railroad tracks will be the perfect route to the White Land for pedestrians and cyclists. At the edge of the Army Depot, small-scale biological farms will have space and opportunity to develop. The Army Depot, with its 9,884 acres and 500 bunkers, will be divided into several zones. One part will be inaccessible to the public and completely left to nature's rule. Here, the depot houses the largest herd of the mysterious white deer in the world. Other parts will be quiet areas, with partially restricted access for pedestrians who wish to explore the area by way of overrun asphalt roads and pathways. Innovative and affordable bunker housing can transform a number of zones to new, vibrant residential areas and senior houses or care homes, while a few other bunkers can be used for educational purposes. In the Q zone, the restricted area of the depot, renewable energy will be collected, and extensive pasturing can offer a solution to the current excessive mowing management. At the same time, it offers an alternative for large-scale livestock farming in the region. Miles of fences and rusty barbed wire offer a strange view at first, but are a relic in the landscape, as they help explain the rich fauna and flora in the Army Depot. When we cross the depot, west to east, we find that it is connected to a new, wide park at the town center of Romulus, where a recreational pathway heads to the northern wetlands. At the level of the former military barracks, the new LAND DIX Hospital can be found, an institution creating jobs and reinstating the tradition of care in the region. Arriving in Romulus City, your 5 to 6 mile long walk will have given you a great view of all that the White Land has to offer. The entire route is an interactive recreational path, making the landscape and its history with its multiple layers tangible and visible by means of recognizable information boards, directional signs, and a digital app. Aside from all the previous, the plan for the White Land of Dix offers a few interventions that will contribute greatly to the local ecosystem, stimulate biodiversity, and create an awareness with regards to nature development. The plan focuses on mowing management, removing paved or disused infrastructure, instating renewable energy sources, and offering suggestions to stimulate the development of vulnerable species. But the project also carries a risk. By developing the White Land of Dix and organizing interventions, we risk losing part of the adventure and mystery of the landscape. It's a slight paradox, because what appealed to me most was exactly the fact that the area was undeveloped and abandoned. For that reason, the suggestion of interventions is at the same time an argument for making as few interventions as possible. An interesting reference area is Park Zollverein in Essen, Germany, an old mining ground that was closed off from the public for a long time, creating a fascinating mix of remnants of the old infrastructure and nature taking its course, resulting in a huge increase in biodiversity. The park opened in 2005 as an intentionally uncompleted landscape park, where the largest intervention was simply opening up the gates. A citizen of Willard wrote to me a few months ago, "On a few occasions I was in the north part of the depot alone. To know I was probably the only person in that deserted 9,000 plus acres was eerie but serene. It would be amazing to keep that feeling within the dream of the White Land." The history of the area tells the story of how government decisions can have such a large impact on small communities and on the lives of people living in remote areas, on welfare, happiness, and community life. The White Land of Dix is an attempt to make the history and its processes visible again, making it a recreational and touristically appealing place, and in that way creating opportunities for the locals.